Part 1, The Capture. The barren planet of Doria. The sun beat down mercilessly on the rocky terrain of Doria, a barren planet on the outer rim of the Andromeda Galaxy. Commander Jake Harmon wiped sweat from his brow as he trudged through the canyon, his combat boots kicking up dust with each step. His mission was supposed to be simple: scout the planet for potential mining resources and return to base. No one had mentioned the locals. A sudden ambush. Jake paused, his light blue eyes narrowing as he scanned the ridge above. Something didn't feel right. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, a sensation that had saved his life more times than he could count during the Centaur Wars. He was reaching for his rifle when they struck. The tribal aliens. They came from everywhere, small, agile creatures with gray-green skin and pointed ears, wielding primitive but effective weapons. Their high-pitched war cries echoed through the canyon as they swarmed him. Jake roared, managing to fire off 3 shots before they overwhelmed him. His training kicked in as he fought viciously, his fists connecting with leathery skin and bony faces. He took down 4 of them before something hard cracked against the back of his skull, and the world went dark. The cooking pit. When Jake regained consciousness, he found himself bound with thick vines, suspended over what appeared to be a cooking pit. The aliens danced around him, chattering excitedly in their guttural language. One particularly ugly specimen, apparently their leader, prodded Jake's bicep with a sharp stick. "Prime meat. Prime meat," the alien said in broken standard, revealing yellow teeth in what might have been a smile. "Human tastes good. Special feast." Jake's defiance. "Listen here, you green piece of," Jake growled, straining against his bonds. "I'm a Federation commander. There's an entire fleet that will rain hell on this rock if I don't report back. No escape." The alien leader merely cackled, poking him again. "No ship signal here. Mountains block. No one find you." Jake's muscles bulged as he fought against the restraints, his jaw clenched in determination. He'd survived 3 wars, he wasn't about to end up as dinner for a bunch of primitive aliens. The priestess's arrival. Just as the leader raised a crude knife, a sharp command rang out. The aliens froze, and Jake turned his head to see a new figure approaching. She was taller than the others, her gray-green skin adorned with intricate tattoos. Her eyes, a deep amber, locked onto Jake's. "A new hope. This one is not for eating," she said, her voice calm but authoritative. The leader hesitated, then bowed his head. Jake's heart raced as the priestess stepped closer, her gaze piercing. "You are different," she said. "And you may yet serve a greater purpose." Part 2, The Priestess's Secret. The Priestess's Chambers. Jake was untied from the vines and dragged to a secluded cave, far from the cooking pit. The interior was surprisingly well organized, with shelves carved into the rock walls holding strange artifacts and scrolls. The priestess motioned for the others to leave, and they obeyed without question. Jake rubbed his wrists, eyeing her warily. "A strange alliance. Who are you?" Jake demanded, his voice low but firm. The priestess tilted her head, studying him with those amber eyes. "I am Lyra," she said. "And you, Commander Jake Harmon, are not what I expected." "Knowledge of the Federation." Jake's eyes narrowed. "How do you know my name?" Lyra smiled faintly. "Your Federation is not as unknown to us as you might think. We have been watching. Waiting." She stepped closer, her movements graceful yet deliberate. "You are not here by accident, Commander. Neither are we." The mysterious artifact. Lyra gestured to a large, circular object covered by a cloth. She pulled the cloth away, revealing a glowing artifact embedded with strange symbols. Jake felt a strange pull toward it, as if it were calling to him. "What is that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The ancient civilization. This, Lyra said, her voice filled with reverence, is a relic of the ancients. A race that once ruled this galaxy. They left behind many secrets, and this is one of them. She turned to Jake. You are the key to unlocking its power. Jake's skepticism. Jake crossed his arms, his skepticism evident. And why would I help you? You were about to roast me over a fire. Lyra's expression softened. That was not my doing. The tribe's leader, Korak, is impulsive. He sees only what is in front of him. But I see the bigger picture. And so, I believe, do you. A dangerous proposition. Jake hesitated. He didn't trust her, but he also knew he was in no position to refuse. What do you want from me? Lyra stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Help me activate this artifact. It holds the power to change everything, for your people and mine. Korak's suspicion. As Jake considered her words, a commotion erupted outside the cave. Korak burst in, his eyes blazing with anger. What is this, Lyra? He snarled. You keep the human for yourself? He is food, not a guest. A tense standoff. Lyra turned to face Korak, her expression calm but firm. This human is more valuable alive than dead. He has knowledge we need. Korak's grip tightened on his weapon. You overstep your bounds, priestess. The tribe will not stand for this. Jake's decision. Jake saw his chance. If he played his cards right, he could use this tension to his advantage. Listen, he said, stepping forward. I don't know what's going on here, but if this artifact is as powerful as you say, we need to work together. Otherwise, we're all dead. An uneasy truce. Korak glared at Jake, then at Lyra. Finally, he spat on the ground. Fine. But if this goes wrong, priestess, the blood will be on your hands. He stormed out of the cave, leaving Jake and Lyra alone once more. The plan. Lyra turned to Jake, her expression serious. We don't have much time. Korak will not wait long before acting against us. We must activate the artifact tonight. Jake nodded, though his mind raced. What had he gotten himself into? The first step. Lyra led Jake deeper into the cave, where the artifact glowed brighter. She placed her hand on its surface, and the symbols began to shift and change. Place your hand here, she instructed. Jake hesitated, then did as she said. A surge of power. The moment his hand touched the artifact, a surge of energy coursed through him. Visions flashed before his eyes, ancient battles, starships, and a civilization far more advanced than anything he had ever seen. He gasped, pulling his hand away. The truth revealed. Lyra's eyes met his, filled with a mixture of hope and fear. You see now, don't you? The ancients left this for us. For you. And if we don't act soon, it will fall into the wrong hands. The clock is ticking. Jake took a deep breath, his mind racing. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but one thing was clear, he couldn't let Korak or anyone else misuse this power. All right, he said. What's the plan? Part 3, The Artifact's Power. The Hidden Chamber. Lyra led Jake deeper into the cave, where the air grew cooler and the walls shimmered with a faint, otherworldly glow. The artifact, now fully uncovered, pulsed with a rhythmic light, as if it were alive. Jake couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching him, studying him. The Ancient's Legacy. This artifact, Lyra began, her voice echoing softly in the chamber, is one of many left behind by the Ancients. They were a race of unparalleled intelligence and power. But they vanished millennia ago, leaving only fragments of their technology behind. She paused, her amber eyes locking onto Jake's. This fragment is the most powerful of all. Jake's curiosity. Jake stepped closer, his eyes fixed on the glowing symbols. What does it do? Lyra hesitated, as if weighing how much to reveal. It is a key, she said finally. A key to a network of portals that span the galaxy. With it, one could travel anywhere, instantly. The stakes. Jake's eyes widened. That kind of technology, it could change everything. Wars could be won or lost in an instant. Lyra nodded. Exactly. And that is why it must not fall into the wrong hands. Korak sees it only as a weapon, but it is so much more. A fragile alliance. Jake crossed his arms, his mind racing. And you think I can help you activate it? Lyra's expression softened. You are the first human to touch it and survive. The artifact, it recognizes you. I believe you are the key. Korak's growing suspicion. As they spoke, the sound of distant voices echoed through the cave. Lyra's eyes flicked toward the entrance. Korak is growing impatient. We must act quickly. She placed her hand on the artifact again, and the symbols began to shift. Follow my lead. The activation. Jake hesitated, then placed his hand on the artifact beside hers. The moment his skin made contact, the chamber was flooded with light. Visions filled his mind, ancient cities, starships, and battles on a scale he could barely comprehend. He felt a surge of energy, as if the artifact were feeding him knowledge. The first portal. The ground beneath them began to tremble, and a swirling vortex of light appeared in the center of the chamber. Lyra's eyes shone with excitement. It's working, she exclaimed. This is a portal. It will take us to another relic, one that holds the answers we seek. Korak's interruption. Before they could step through, Korak burst into the chamber, his face twisted with rage. What are you doing? He roared, brandishing a crude but deadly-looking weapon. You dare activate the artifact without my permission? A dangerous standoff. Lyra stepped between Korak and Jake, her voice calm but firm. This is bigger than you, Korak. Bigger than all of us. If we do not act now, the artifact's power will be lost, or worse, stolen by those who would use it for destruction. Korak's ultimatum. Korak's eyes narrowed. You think you can betray the tribe and live? This human is nothing but a pawn, and you are a traitor. He raised his weapon, aiming it at Lyra. Jake instinctively moved to shield her, but Lyra held up a hand. The artifact's defense. As Korak pulled the trigger, the artifact flared brightly, deflecting the blast harmlessly into the wall. Korak stumbled back, his face a mask of shock and fear. What sorcery is this? He muttered. Lyra's resolve. Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady. This is not sorcery, Korak. This is the power of the ancients. And if you stand in our way, you will be destroyed. Korak hesitated, his grip on his weapon tightening. Jake's choice. Jake saw the conflict in Korak's eyes and knew this was their chance. We don't have to be enemies, he said, stepping forward. This artifact can help all of us. But only if we work together. A fragile truce. Korak glared at Jake, then at Lyra. Finally, he lowered his weapon. Fine, he growled. But if this goes wrong, I will hold you both responsible. He turned and stormed out of the chamber, leaving Jake and Lyra alone once more. The journey begins. Lyra turned to Jake, her expression a mix of relief and determination. We must go through the portal. The answers we seek lie on the other side. Jake nodded, though his heart raced. He had no idea what awaited them, but he knew there was no turning back. Stepping into the unknown. Together, they stepped into the swirling vortex of light. The world around them dissolved into a blur of colors and sounds, and for a moment, Jake felt as if he were floating. Then, with a sudden jolt, they emerged on the other side. A new world. The air was thick with the scent of alien flora, and the sky above was a deep shade of purple. Strange, towering structures loomed in the distance, their surfaces covered in the same glowing symbols as the artifact. Lyra took a deep breath, her eyes filled with awe. The second artifact. "We're here," she whispered. "The second relic is close. But we must be careful. This place is not uninhabited." Jake nodded, his hand instinctively reaching for the plasma rifle that was no longer there. He was unarmed, but he knew he couldn't let his guard down. A new threat. As they moved through the alien landscape, the ground beneath them began to tremble. A low, guttural growl echoed through the air, and Jake's instincts screamed at him to run. "What was that?" he asked, his voice tense. "Lyra's warning." Lyra's eyes widened. "We're not alone," she said. "The ancients left guardians to protect their relics. And they do not take kindly to intruders." Part 4, Betrayal and Escape. The Alien Guardians. The growling grew louder, and the ground shook with each step of the approaching creature. Jake's heart pounded as he scanned the alien landscape for any sign of the threat. Lyra grabbed his arm, her grip firm. "We need to move. Now." A desperate run. They sprinted through the dense, purple-hued forest, the towering structures looming in the distance. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the strange, bioluminescent plants cast eerie shadows on the ground. Jake's muscles burned, but he pushed himself to keep up with Lyra. The creature's pursuit. Behind them, the creature's growls turned into deafening roars. Jake glanced over his shoulder and caught a glimpse of it, a massive, reptilian beast with glowing eyes and razor-sharp claws. It moved with terrifying speed, closing the distance between them. Lyra's plan. "There!" Lyra shouted, pointing to a narrow crevice in the rock face ahead. "We can lose it in there." Jake didn't argue. They dove into the crevice just as the creature lunged, its claws scraping against the rock. A moment of respite. The crevice was tight, forcing them to squeeze through single file. The creature roared in frustration, unable to follow. Jake leaned against the cool rock, catching his breath. "What the hell was that?" he gasped. Lyra's explanation. "A guardian," Lyra replied, her voice steady despite the adrenaline. "The ancients created them to protect their relics. They are relentless." She peered down the narrow passage. "This way. We're close." The second artifact. They emerged from the crevice into a vast, open chamber. In the center stood a pedestal, and on it rested another artifact, larger and more intricate than the first. Its surface was covered in the same glowing symbols, but they pulsed with a rhythmic, almost hypnotic light. Jake's apprehension. Jake approached the artifact cautiously. "This is it?" he asked. Lyra nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of awe and determination. "Yes. But we must be careful. The Guardians are not the only danger here." Korak's betrayal. As if on cue, a familiar voice echoed through the chamber. "You didn't think you could leave me behind, did you?" Jake and Lyra turned to see Korak standing at the entrance, a group of armed tribesmen at his side. His eyes gleamed with malice. A tense standoff. Lyra stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Korak, this is not the way. The artifact's power is not meant for us to wield. It will destroy us if we misuse it." Korak sneered. "You always were weak, Lyra. The tribe needs strength, not your foolish caution." Jake's intervention. Jake moved to stand beside Lyra, his fists clenched. "You're making a mistake, Korak. This isn't about strength. It's about survival." Korak's eyes narrowed. "You think you can stop me, human? You are nothing but prey. The battle begins." Korak raised his weapon, and his tribesmen charged. Jake and Lyra had no choice but to fight. Jake grabbed a fallen branch, using it as a makeshift weapon, while Lyra wielded a small, curved blade. The chamber erupted into chaos. Lyra's sacrifice. As the battle raged, Lyra managed to reach the artifact. She placed her hand on its surface, and the symbols flared brightly. "Jake," she shouted. "We need to activate it." Jake fought his way to her side, dodging blows and striking back with everything he had. The artifact's power. Together, they placed their hands on the artifact. The chamber was flooded with light, and the ground began to shake. Korik and his tribesmen stumbled, their attacks faltering. "What have you done?" Korik roared, his voice filled with fear. The portal opens. A swirling vortex of light appeared in the center of the chamber, just like before. Lyra grabbed Jake's hand. "We need to go," she urged. Jake hesitated, glancing at Korik. "What about them?" Lyra's resolve. "They made their choice," Lyra said firmly. "We cannot save them from themselves." Jake nodded, and together they stepped into the vortex. The world around them dissolved into a blur of colors and sounds. A new destination. When the light faded, they found themselves in a completely different place. The air was cool and crisp, and the sky above was a deep, star-filled black. Strange, crystalline structures rose around them, their surfaces reflecting the light of a distant sun. The third artifact. In the center of the clearing stood another pedestal, and on it rested the third artifact. This one was smaller but no less intricate, its symbols glowing with a soft, steady light. Lyra approached it cautiously, her eyes filled with wonder. Jake's realization. "This is it, isn't it?" Jake asked. "The final piece." Lyra nodded. "Yes. But we must be careful. The Ancient's power is not to be taken lightly." She placed her hand on the artifact, and the symbols began to shift. A new threat. Before they could activate it, a low, mechanical hum filled the air. Jake turned to see a group of sleek, humanoid robots emerging from the shadows. Their eyes glowed with a cold, blue light, and their movements were precise and deliberate. "The Ancient's defenders. What are those?" Jake asked, his voice tense. Lyra's expression was grim. "The Ancient's final defense. They will not let us take the artifact without a fight. The final stand." Jake and Lyra prepared themselves as the robots advanced. The battle for the artifact's power was far from over, and the stakes had never been higher.